Hi, I'm Brianna, and I am interviewing my mom for my Human Sexuality video assignment. She's 38 years old, and I'm going to be asking her some questions about um, sexuality and what it was like for her growing up and a bunch of other things. So here we go. Okay, question number 1. What did you learn about sexuality from your teachers, friends, church, parents, or books?
Most of what I learned was from my mom. She was really open and I could ask her anything. Most of my friends would ask me to ask my mom, or if they had the courage, they would ask her themselves. Um, from church, we were taught, not to have sex until you're married.
Mm-hmm. Did your friends tell you anything that you didn't know? Or no, because they all went and talked to grandma?
No, I think my friends all came, and would ask me or say, could you ask your mom? And I would. So pretty much most of them asked me to ask my mom or would ask my mom.
Okay. Question number 2. What information and ideas were the norm when you were growing up?
I would say it's a lot different than it is now. It was not like the gays and lesbians and gay marriage. That stuff wasn't talked about at all. It's completely different on TV. I don't know. It was kind of a taboo subject, I think, for most people. It wasn't something that was talked about. With my mom, it was, but with my friends, I learned like how other families were so different than mine because they were not to ask their parents about stuff like that.
Yeah, that's why they all came to you and grandma.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 3. What were the attitudes of your parents, your friends, and the media about sex?
I think back then the media, it was not something that was talked about on TV. Everything was very censored. My parents, my mom and dad were very different. My dad was, I was raised in church, but my dad was very strict in his religion. My mom was really open with us about sex. My dad, not so much. Like my dad, he knew that my mom told us stuff and that we could ask her stuff. He just didn't want us asking him. And, my parents wanted me to wait until I was married to have sex. But I knew that my mom was somebody I could talk to about it if I did do it before I was married. But my dad is somebody who would have a completely different opinion on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Question number 4. Is there any information you wish you had received about sex but didn't?
I guess I really didn't know that much about the birth control pill. I didn't know that if you take different medications that you could get pregnant because it makes it so it's not effective. And I didn't really know the importance of, when I was growing up, I thought, if you miss one day of your pill, it's not that big a deal because it's in your system. But that's not the case.
Yeah.
It makes a difference.
Okay. Question number 5. Or is that 4? Yeah, 5. Do you think most people were virgins when they got married? If you have been married, what year were you first married? Apply the virgin question to the year you first got married. So you're married, so.
I would say most of my friends and most people that I knew grew up with the idea that they would be a virgin when they got married. I don't think necessarily that was the case. I knew that a lot of, kids, girls experimented with sex a lot sooner than what they thought they were going to. It was definitely something that was believed at a way different level than it is now, that should be the way it is, but I don't necessarily think that that's how it was for everybody. Not like when my mom got married. I know that when my mom got married in that era, everybody was supposed to be a virgin. And I got married in 93.
Okay. Okay, question number 6. When did you first learn about homosexuality? What were attitudes about it like?
Gosh. I mean, I knew about it. I knew that, that there were people that were gay and lesbian. I never really encountered anybody. I don't remember in high school, I don't remember knowing somebody, and it definitely wasn't talked about. So I didn't know a whole lot of that on it, and I didn't know a whole lot of, I didn't know anybody. I know now some of the people that I grew up with and went to high school with that are gay and lesbian, but in school it was not talked about. It was completely different than now. It was not an open subject for people to talk about.
Do you know what age you were when you first learned or heard about homosexuality? Do you know
I want to say probably 8th grade. Is when I heard people talking about it, and I remember asking my mom, a little bit about it, and I got a very vague answers. I don't really know that she was. I think she knew what it was, but
she wasn't very familiar with it.
Yeah, I don't think she had a whole lot of information on it, and so I want to say 8th grade is when I first, I heard other kids, say things, little things, and stuff in the locker room, just weird stuff, and so I asked my mom, but I didn't have a whole lot of information on it.
Okay. Next question. What did people use for birth control during the era you became sexually active?
Birth control and condoms.
So the same thing they use now?
Okay. There's a lot more that they have now. It was pretty much birth control or condoms. There's, other things now.
There was less of it back then? There were less, options, you think?
Yeah.
Okay. What was easier or more difficult about sexuality for your generation than for mine?
What was easier about mine?
Or more difficult?
I would say more difficult in my era because I think the majority of kids didn't have the information they needed, and they would experiment to find out. And because it was so taboo and you couldn't talk to your parents about it, I think it was harder. I think now, that's kind of a mixed question, because now I think it's so in your face, it's on TV, it's so openly accepted, and I don't think that anybody really puts as much, I don't think there's a big emphasis on wait till you're married. It's something that's sacred. It's something that, you should share with your husband. I don't think that that's how it is now. I think it's too in your face. It's everywhere. So I think sex is way more openly accepted. I think that you end up having way more sexual partners by the time you get married than it was when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like that. It wasn't like, oh, you slept with 4 people and then you get married. It's, pretty much most of the girls that I knew had sex with somebody who they thought they were going to marry, and then maybe it didn't work out, and then, they had opportunities to have sex with lots of other people, but they didn't. They waited, and then when they were engaged or thought they were going to be married, so maybe 1 to 2 partners, and I think it's different.
So do you think that because sex is so in our faces in this day and age, do you think it makes it more difficult for us, or maybe a little easier?
I think it's easier on you guys as far as knowledge. I think that you have plenty of knowledge. I think that there's knowledge everywhere. There's the internet and TV, and people talk about it openly. I think as far as, I mean, I would guess that the pregnancy rate is probably a lot higher now than it was when I was a teenager. And I just think that, you know, when it's not taught to you in a way that it should be something sacred and you should wait, I think that, I mean, that's what happens. It ends up to where you're having multiple partners and you end up, you know, having a baby or babies. And I just think that that's going on a lot more now than it was when I was a kid.
Okay. How did you feel about your body changing from a child to a teenager?
That's funny because I felt like I waited a long time for that to happen. All my friends were wearing bras and got their period, and you know that for my, like, everybody was excited and talked about it, and it was a big deal. And I'm like, well, why am I not? When's it going to happen for me? But it took a while. So I think I was like 14 when I started my period, and I got teased a little bit from my friends, you know, because I didn't develop as quickly as they did, and you know, I was a really skinny kid, so maybe, you know, it was a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
That I didn't, you know, get boobs and have my period like everybody else.
What age were your friends when they first started going through puberty?
I would say some were 12 and 13. I would say 12 and 13 was the majority of them. I actually think I'm the only one out of my group of friends that started, because I had been 14 for a while too, so I was probably 14 and a half or so by the time I started.
Okay. How quickly did you mature compared to your classmates? How did you feel about that?
I thought I was pretty mature. I think that's just more my personality. I'm more like you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think I was a lot more mature. I also think that I had a different outlook on sex. I think because I was raised in church. And a lot of my friends, I had friends that were raised in church and felt the same way. And then I had friends that weren't. And so they were a little more silly and a little more willing to try things that I wouldn't try.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you know about menstruation before you experienced it? What were you told about it?
Yes, I knew everything about it. I knew my mom was open, and I knew, you know, everything. She, you know, she wanted to come in the bathroom and, you know, show me everything, which was a little uncomfortable. But I had friends who had no idea about their period. And one girlfriend of mine came over pounding on the door crying and had to come in and talk to my mom because her mom wouldn't talk to her about any of that stuff, anything about growing up or your body changing or sex or anything. And it's funny because she remembers that to this day, that my mom was the one that she had to come to for stuff like that.
I can imagine. Okay. When did you have your first crush on someone? What happened?
Like a real crush or like a kitty crush? Because
I don't know, whichever one you want to talk about.
I would say more of a real crush was 7th grade.
What happened with that?
You know, I just felt shy when I would see him, and I'd get butterflies, and I don't know. I wrote him notes, which is kind of silly, but I wouldn't sign who it was from. You know, it would get passed through a couple friends to get to him.
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Okay. What about sex do you wish you knew more about as an adult?
Gosh. As of right now, what do I wish I knew?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that there's not a whole lot that you can't know because, I mean, you can look things up on the internet, and I don't really know how to apply that because I feel like I know a lot about sex, and I've been married for so long. You know, I've been married 19 years, 18 years, something like that, a long time. So, um,
What about anything like scientifically, maybe that you don't, nothing that you like don't know off the top of your head? Anything you don't know off the top of your head that you wish you knew more about, or anything like that? Like how things happen, why they happen, why people feel a certain way, maybe anything like that.
I mean, maybe I guess more about how men and women are different as far as maybe, you know, it would make you or me understand. You know, I think I have a pretty good understanding because men and women are different. I think that men are, you know, driven by, you know, everything is physical, and for women, everything's emotional. Mostly, you know, everything's emotional. So maybe if I knew more about that.
Like specifically just the differences between men and women when it comes to sex.
Yeah, because I think men and women want different things.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants the same thing in the end,
Yeah.
the ultimate outcome in sex. But I think the way they go about it sometimes is different.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't really know why that is. I just attribute it to being because men are physical and women are emotional. And, you know, so sometimes we want different things as far as sex, but we both want the same outcome. So maybe if I knew more about that.
Okay. Why do you think it can be so difficult for parents to talk to their kids about sex? What might make it easier?
Gosh, I mean, maybe the way they were raised makes it hard for them to talk about their kids or talk to their kids about sex. For me, it's not. I think I'm pretty open and I want you guys to be able to ask me anything. And I think for you, I've answered whatever you've ever asked me. And I would rather that my kids get information from me rather than learning it at school or from their friends or, you know, just wanting to experiment to find out. I basically think that it's how you're raised. I think for some people, it's embarrassing. And I think for some kids, it's embarrassing to ask your parents about sex. I think it depends on the closeness of your relationship with your parents.
Yeah.
But I think most people from my era, it's about how they were raised. If they were raised with it being don't ask me, that's, you know, personal. You're not allowed to ask me personal questions. Then it's hard for them to open up to their kids in the same way, which I think is sad.
Yeah.
So.
What do you think might make it easier on those parents that think that it's difficult to talk to their children about sex?
Gosh, I don't know what would make it easier. Maybe,
like, is there anything you did to make it easier to talk to us about sex? Was there anything that you personally did maybe that made it easier?
I mean, I really think it was how I was raised. Had I been raised different, then I think I would think differently now. I think that maybe if I was taught that it was something embarrassing and you don't talk about it, like your dad was raised different than me, and it's not as easy for him. I mean, he gets weirded out if he hears us talking about sex because in his family, don't ask about sex. Don't ask about personal. It's none of your business. You're a kid, and adult stuff is adult stuff, and kid stuff is kid stuff, and we don't mix the two. You know, and for me, I thought that was weird. That it weirded him out. I don't know what could help him though. I mean, I feel like it's so on TV. It's so on the internet. It's so talked about so openly. I mean, I don't understand why it's would be uncomfortable for somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, except for the way they were raised, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think the internet has changed how Americans view sexuality? If no, why not? If yes, how so?
I think so. I think not just the internet. I mean, there's so much access on the internet. I mean, there's access to everything. Everything you want to see, you can find it on the internet. You don't have to pay for it, and you don't have to look very hard. So it's definitely changed. Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think kids as young as, 9 years old, if they hear it and they can spell it, they can look it up.
Yeah.
Which is kind of sad. I mean, I would rather it not be that way. I mean, I think that there's age-appropriate things that kids should know. And then when they're at, the junior high, I mean, there's just a difference. I don't want your 5-year-old brother knowing things, obviously about sex that somebody 13 would know. I just think there's age-appropriate things for them to know about sex, but as far as the internet, it makes it so it's open to anybody of any age as long as you can spell it. So I don't think it's a good thing.
Do you think that those age-appropriate barriers have been broken because of the access to the internet or anything like that?
I think for most families they have, especially if you have two parents at work. And so when your parent's not home, then it's open access to the internet and what's on TV. And, I think I was super open with you guys about sex, but I always think it was age appropriate. And I think that when you're young, I didn't want you to see things on TV that had to do with sex because it wasn't necessary for you to know them. I think that that's harder now. It's harder for me when you and your brother, because he's a senior in high school, when you guys were growing up, it was easy for me to censor what you were seeing. It's not easy now. It's not easy for me to censor what your 5-year-old brother and what your 12-year-old brother see. It's not. And your 12-year-old brother can look stuff up on the internet. So.
Okay. This is our last question. Do you believe in love at first sight? Why or why not? Has it ever happened to you?
I think that I don't know about love at first sight because you don't know the person. It can be, you feel a huge attraction to somebody, and, you feel different. But I don't think just seeing someone in your sight, it's love at first sight. I think it's when you spend time with that person, I think that you can know early on that you could fall in love with them. And yeah, it's happened to me because, I started dating in 9th grade. Not really dating, but, I would have a boy come to my house and we'd sit outside and talk, or, we'd walk down to the pizza place and get pizza. So, I dated different guys, and then the one guy, he was just different. He was different. How I felt about him was different. I thought I could spend the rest of my life with him. Things didn't work out with him. I dated, I was getting older, so I dated more guys, dated guys through high school, and then I met your dad. And it was those two people out of everybody that I dated, there was just something different. It was something and it was pretty early on. I would say just getting to know them a little bit, I knew that there was something different in how I felt about them. So definitely, I definitely think that you can tell early on after meeting somebody if it's somebody that you could spend the rest of your life with. Because there's something that has to be there, and it's something that you feel, and it's not something really that you can explain to other people until you feel it yourself. Because you can date other people and you're like, well, they're nice and they have everything going for them, but if you don't have that feeling, then you don't have it. And I've dated guys thinking, oh, well, maybe it'll be there. Maybe I'll feel different. And I didn't. So the two people that I felt different about, there's two people out of everybody that I dated. And I really think that I could have had a marriage with the first guy that I felt that way about. His circumstances were different, so it didn't work out. And then your dad. So.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that concludes our interview. Thanks, Mom.
You're welcome.
All right.